in preparing for this talk, I realized that there's a lot of kind of background about development of kids and stuff that's important to know about, to kind of realize what technology means to them. So, and I don't claim to be an expert on this. This year will be my 30th year of being a pediatrician, and I've just noticed probably over the past 15 years or so what a change has taken place in mostly our preteens and teenagers' mental health. And this was before COVID ever thought about being here. So, and one of the things that we started probably about 10 years ago was the American Academy of Pediatrics had us start including a screener for anxiety and depression. It's called a GAD-7 and a PHQ-9 starting when they're 11 and then continuing on every year. So I noticed that these numbers, so the GAD-7 is the generalized anxiety screener, and above 7 is elevated, and the PHQ-9 is the depression screener, and above 9 is elevated. And I started seeing numbers in the 20s, like all the time, and started trying to figure out what is going on. Not doing a lot of research myself or anything, but I did start really asking more questions about phones and social media and gaming, and that certainly seemed to be the most consistent thing that I saw with elevated scores. So basically, essentials for child development, there are several of them. Kids, human kids are the one mammal that they have a long period of time where their brain grows. So it's pretty much the brain size is about 90% at age 5, but then all the pathways that they start forming, all the neurons and the neuronal pathways go on until really like 25. I mean, when parents tell you your brain's not mature till you're 25, they're right. But really from 5 to 16 or so is a lot of it is going on then. And so, can you get the next one? I'm sorry. So to go back to that, I'm sorry. So they're doing, so these kids, instead of seeking new experiences and learning new skills and meeting new people and all, they're spending a lot more time on screens. And so, I mean, I see it all the time in my office. Kids will come in, parents always have, not always, but most of the time have the iPad or their iPhone, and they're just trying to keep the kid happy or the teenagers happy or whoever happy. And so they're, using that. And so the more that they're using this technology, the fewer neuronal pathways they're making. So it's the same things over and over and over again. Okay, the next one. So and then technology has replaced free play. I really try to talk to parents. We've seen a lot of decrease in a lot more developmental delay than I've ever seen in my 30 years. And a lot of it is because they're being put in front of the TV or in front of a tablet or screen at a much earlier age and for much longer periods of time. So instead of, even babies at 2 months of age can interact with the adults, and that's what they're supposed to do, and that's how they learn to be, to show their emotions and to interpret emotions from the adults and other kids around them. And, it's kind of funny, like when I see newborns and they have toddler siblings, and the parents will say, oh, or not newborns, but as they start smiling and, and cooing and stuff more, and they'll say, oh yeah, they always do it more with the toddler sibling than with me. And it's true. And babies, they figure out, okay, that's a fun little person, and this is my mom or dad or whatever, So, they learn things so quickly. It's amazing. So we've seen that the lack of play results in social, cognitive, and emotional impairment. I can really, from doing this for a long period of time, I can tell a lot about what goes on at home and how much time that the parents and other people are interacting with the kids and when they're not. And some, I mean, this might not be a popular thing, but I do believe that some extent of our problems with social interaction and with the increase in autism and all, I mean, autism is, by definition, it really is something that was started early on in embryologic and all. But I do think that there's a lot of overlap in kids that are just not getting enough emotional and social interaction. I do see a lot of problems with their how their emotional impairment. Sorry. This is when I get off.
It's okay.
Sorry. Okay. Good. Okay. So.
Can we go to the next slide?
Yep. So, and this technology impacts attunement. So just like we were saying, that they learn how to tune into other people and to work with them or play with them and all. And not only in little kids where they're learning just emotional facial expressions and all, but even like with older kids. I mean, I remember growing up and when my kids were growing up and all, just things like, girls in elementary school, we'd play the, games where you're doing the hand thing and you have to sing the songs and all, and you have to work together and kind of figure each other out what the next move is and everything. And we're losing a ton of that. And then how it affects social learning, just sort of common sense. They're spending more time on that, so they don't have time to interact and observe people in multiple groups instead of, doing different things with different people and learning how they want to do things and how they want to interact with people and all. Instead, they're spending all the time on their social media, on their Instagram, kind of just scrolling through with the influencers that they're looking at and seeing how many likes and dislikes they get and then making up what they think and what they believe with those rather than with the people around them. Next. And, the mentoring relationship. So I try to talk to kids, especially adolescents and starting in middle school and then high school about like what they want to do or what they're thinking about they want to do. And and a lot of times I get so much more, I have no idea. I don't know what I want to do. And I mean, these are like juniors in high school and all. And I think a lot of it is that they're just spending so much time on their tablets and social media and everything that they just don't get those real world relationships. And then, okay, where was that, Grayson? Sorry. And then I talked about just for instance, recently I was watching the Capital One commercial where there's a female astronaut, and then there's Derek Jeter. The female astronaut's Karen Nyberg. I finally looked that up. And Derek Jeter, the baseball player, and then the Capital One actor. And they're in the classroom. It's for like work day, showing whatever what your parents do or whatever. And they're asking all these questions. And so like Derek Jeter's starting to answer, and they're like, no, the Capital One guy. And then they're asking another one, and the astronauts say, no, the Capital One guy. And so they're much more interested in what that person is doing than true role models that, have done lots of great things. So, and I have to say that I can't tell you how many times when I ask kids, and it just happens to be that most of the boys, probably 70% of the boys that I ask, like, what do you want to do when you grow up? Well, I'm going to be a gamer. I'm going to be a professional gamer. I'm going to write games. I'm going to, do it. And I was like, okay. So I know one person that actually did that, but yeah. And then a lot of the girls want to be an influencer. So, it's a little sad. Yeah. Okay. So, and then how the use of technology affects children during sensitive periods. So there are times in development, so for instance, cognitive development, early on, like 0 to 2, kids can learn language so much easier than as they get older. And then for cultural development or social development, these are the ages, the 11 to 14-year-old for female and 14 to 15-year-old for males. And so these are when they're really developing their ideas about like right and wrong and what they think is important and all. And so it is definitely the worst time for social media use. But it's also the time when the companies are trying to get these kids. So, supposedly you can't get an Instagram until you're 13. You can pretty much lie and get it. That's the earlier. So when kids start at these ages, they very rarely stop. So that's why there's right now a really big push in Congress to get the age to 16, which is what they initially really wanted, but for political reasons, they went ahead with 13, which has been probably the worst thing for our kids. So let's see. Okay, Grayson, I think I went to the next. Sorry. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Yep. So, okay. So, sensitive period. And then, like, just getting kids to, they're so worried about what, their social status and all that, company, or they'll start things like Snapchat streaks and everything, and they'll end up being more worried about, oh, I got to keep up the streak, I got to keep it going, than what they're doing at home or what they're doing in school or things like that. So they just try to get them addicted. And they, okay, let's see. Oh, yeah, and then the Gen Z, yeah. So Grayson is actually the first year of Gen Z. And their mental health outcomes are so much worse than millennials because they were the first ones to go through puberty and these sensitive periods on smartphones. Okay. The next one, there are 4 foundational harms of phone-based childhood. This is going to run out, Craig. So the first one is social deprivation, which sort of goes without saying. So instead of doing things with their friends and with parents and grandparents and teammates and all, they're spending much more time by themselves on their phones, on their devices, on their gaming stations. And the average teen reports spending at least 7 hours a day on screens. And I get this all the time. I mean, a lot of kids much younger than teens, I'll ask them, so what do you think? How much time do you spend on screens? And they're like, when I'm out of school, like 24/7. And I had a couple instances recently, just like the past week. I had a 7-year-old who was coming to see me who had ADHD, and I was asking him how he was doing, and he'd been on the same medicine for 2 years, and previous times he'd been doing fine on it, no problems or anything. And Mom said, you know what? He's been having headaches for the past 6 months. I think it's the medicine. And I looked back at my chart. I'm like, well, he's been on the same medicine for 2 years. We haven't changed anything. Anything else going on? So then I decided to ask the kid. And I said, well, so tell me about your sleep habits. Like, what time do you go to bed? And he goes, last night, 1 a.m. And I was like, really? Oh, so what were you doing before you went to bed? And he goes, it's on my phone. And I said, what are you doing on your phone? Playing games? And Mom was like, it's so funny because I can usually, if I address the kid, they'll tell me quicker than the parent can get them to not tell me. But, so he and then so we started talking about it, and he was the only one in the family with an iPhone. Everybody else had Android. So he had the iPhone charger in his room. And so I told Mom, you need to take the iPhone away from him. But if you're not going to do that, at least take the charger out of his room so he's not up on it all night, because they're going to be. He's 7. And so he threw a fit. I mean, like, my nurse came in to make sure everything was okay. And, he's like, you're not taking my iPhone charger away from me. You are not doing that. And so anyway, it's causing sleep deprivation. Yeah, among other things. And so that's probably one of the biggest complaints I get from middle schoolers and teenagers is that I'm tired all the time, and the mom wants me to do all this blood work and all, but really all I have to do is start asking, what do you do before you go to bed? I'm on my phone. And where does your phone go? It stays next to my bed. And, and so they're hearing this, beeping and tinging or, answering the phone all night long. So, so the recommendations are obviously not to have them in their rooms and to take them away and not have any screen time 30 to 60 minutes prior to bedtime. It decreases your body's ability to make melatonin, which I tell kids not only helps you sleep, but it helps prevent cancer. So sometimes that will get them, but not always. Attention, fragmentation, and poor executive functioning. I have so many more kids that I see for possible ADHD or just not being able to pay attention, not being able to focus, not being able to get their work done on time, all these executive functioning processes that they can't do anymore because they're on their phone all the time. And so it really affects that, and it's really bad. And I see it in parents too. And parents will say, I think, and I'll say, does anybody else in the family have ADHD? And they're like, no one, I was never diagnosed, but I know I do. And they're on their phone the whole time they're in the room with me, and I'm like, you don't have ADHD, you have you have phone use problems. Yeah. So it's really causing a lot of problems with that. So you can't concentrate on what you're trying to learn when you're taking your attention away from that and onto your phone every 3 minutes or so. And then addiction, and unfortunately I have seen a fair amount of addiction. Currently 7 to 10% of teens have clinical addiction to social media or gaming. I had a little boy about 6 or 7 years ago. He's a junior in high school now. When he was 10, he came in to see me. I've seen him forever, and his little sister, and sweetest kid. And he came in and we discussed. Mom was worried because he was becoming withdrawn and seemed kind of depressed and all. So we talked about it for a long time, and luckily we had a very good relationship because I'd known him forever. And he told me, because this was even before, he was 10, so we weren't using the screeners at that age, but he was suicidal. And he had a plan and thought about it a lot. And we found out that he was spending all his time not in school gaming, and had just gotten into some a really dark place with that. So luckily we were able to talk to him and kind of came up with Mom a plan. And like I said, I saw him the other day. He's got a part-time job. He's doing great, but he was lucky because we caught that. Mom realized that at age 10, but a lot of parents don't. And if you get, to the, like we were saying, the 13, 14-year-olds, sometimes it's hard to get them back. Okay, go ahead. So this is the suicide rates for younger adolescents. You can see it just went shoop right up 2010. More than tripled in girls and more than doubled in boys. And we keep Creekside open. We're constantly seeing suicidal kids that need help. And that is I know, is the number one contributor. So, next, yeah. And then self-harm. So they get into these, the algorithms for like TikTok and all. So you have a 13-year-old gets a TikTok account. They say something about, gosh, I'm just kind of anxious or depressed or whatever. That's all they're getting fed now. All these TikTok videos about mental health and mental illness. And that if you're seeing that all day long, and these TikTok influencers are getting lots of likes, and the more extreme they are, the more likes they get. And so those are the people that they're wanting to be like. And they have, I can't tell you how many times I have girls come in, and sometimes they truly are depressed or anxious, and sometimes it's just their friends or the people they're watching. But a lot of times, even the ones that I'm not sure really are, you don't know. And there's so much information out there for them. I mean, I've had kids try to strangle themselves, try to slit their wrists, and who knows? You don't know. You don't know who that kid that you're going to send home is. So then we end up having to admit them, and a lot of times parents will get upset. And I know I've had recently a couple parents that very upset because somehow they got to the school counselor or to the principal and told them this, and they called DCS or sent them for evaluation at Creekside. But you know what? You don't know. I mean, kids are impulsive, and especially young kids, and so you don't know which one is actually going to do it and which one is just talking about it to get some attention. So anyway, this has become a huge problem. And same thing, yeah, major depression among teens is just out of control. And why social media harms girls more than boys. Girls are so much more sensitive to visual comparisons. And now instead of just having their friends at school or on their teams or whatever that they're comparing themselves with, they're comparing themselves with social media influencers who have every filter known to man. They make themselves look absolutely perfect. I mean, Grayson has showed me like pictures of friends or whatever. I'm like, whoa, God, they look great. And she's like, yeah, they got filters on, you know. But the 13-year-olds and all they're not thinking like that because girls as teenagers think their body is the worst thing. They can look perfect, and they're going to see themselves so much different. So this just, and then they're looking on their friends' accounts, and they're getting like, and they're not getting all these likes. So it just makes them feel so much worse about themselves. They can't live up to the expectations that are online. And then girls' aggressions often expressed in attempts to harm relationships and reputations of other girls. So, you know, it used to be like when I was in middle school, you know, somebody took your boyfriend or whatever, you know, you'd write a note, pass it back, you put on the note, you know, she stinks or whatever, you know, some stupid, look what she's wearing today. Well, you know, that goes to maybe 3 other girls or so. Well, they put it on social media, and it goes viral to everybody. So-and-so is a slut or whatever, you know, slept with so-and-so. And so that is, the cyberbullying is out of control. I'm sure you guys have experience with that, but it's terrible.
And it's 24/7
24/7
during the school day.
Absolutely. They can't go home and get away from it. It's right there with them. It's going to bed, it's going to the bathroom, it's going wherever. Yeah. And then girls and women do more readily share emotions. So just like I was talking about. So, you know, if I'm depressed, I mean, we do it probably like, God, I'm so depressed today or whatever. And then, you know, you just kind of share that. And just like I said, you're setting yourself up to just be getting sent all sorts of things about whatever emotion is that you're expressing at that time. And then also, internet and social media has made it easier for men to approach and stalk girls and women. So, you know, the 13-year-old boys that your girls are talking to may be 35-year-old pedophiles. So I had an instance, probably like 8 years ago or so, where I was seeing a middle schooler, and the parents brought her in because they were obviously very upset because they had been called by the police in Alabama to let them know that their daughters, they had just arrested a man who was a pedophile, and they had her daughter's contact was on his list. So then we found out that he had indeed contacted her, gone to her house in Kingsport, Tennessee, and raped her. So, and that girl I saw for the next few years, it was horrible. I mean, that devastated her. I don't know where she is now, and I can tell you it's not in a good place. So those are the types of things that can happen in 1 second, and you have no idea. And And where we used to, and also just like and this has gone on since my kids have been in high school and all, but just the nude pictures, and even if you're not sending nude pictures, they put your face on them, and then they go out there, and you're ruined or whatever. And so there's just so much more that can happen with technology than it used to be. And then just the isolation. So, where girls used to get together and talk about things together in groups, in pairs, now they're pretty much facing them alone. So, and what's happening to boys? I can tell you that it was interesting what the speaker was talking about today with his son and all, because I've seen so much of that. Where it used to be like, just in general, they would be pretty confident and outgoing when I would talk to them. A lot of these kids I'd seen forever, and we became friends and all. Now I see much more internalizing rather than externalizing their emotions. Instead of beating up somebody or whatever, they're going to take it. They're much more likely to just commit suicide, and it's really scary. And also just they're taken away from, I have a lot of boys that I see, especially adolescents, that have stopped playing any extracurricular, stop playing games, stop doing bands, stop doing whatever, because they rather be gaming. And so they're in their room gaming instead of getting any sort of real world things that help them mature and that help them figure out and problem solve. And also the use of smartphones and high-speed internet for hardcore porn. The things that come up on I get emails all the time from Medscapes or pediatric things and all the kinds of things they're telling us to look for in these people, in these adolescents, are really scary. Choking marks and, just more like aggressive sexual behaviors. And then that's what happens, and we do see a lot less teen pregnancies and all. I think they're having a lot more sex online and on phones, which is not, there's no relationship, personal type of things. It's just truly sex. And so that is terrible for these adolescents, their future as far as like relationships and finding a partner and all. And then, and I said about that one. Okay, so for kids ages 0 to 5, just need interaction with other people, with other kids, and they learn best by doing things with kids, with some, a mixture of kids. So some a little bit older than them, so that they kind of push themselves. So they do something slightly older kids are doing. And then the older kids benefit because they're helping with those little kids, and they're teaching them, and they're being mentors, and they're being older sibling type of things. And just what he was saying today, what you do matters so much more than what you say. The one kid that I had this week who I was evaluating for ADHD, and he had, I actually had sent Vanderbilt forms. Anybody of you who are teachers know what those are, and they're just like reviewing what kind of behaviors they're having, whether they match up with poor concentration, hyperactivity, things like that. And his teacher both his teachers actually said, gosh, we saw this huge improvement in him over, the past little bit or whatever. But then the parents were called because things got worse again. So when we brought him in to talk to him, I asked him, well, what did you change? What happened there? And he said, well, he and his older sister had done really poorly in school. And so we told him, when it was time for the book fair, we said, no, you're not getting money, you're not getting books at the book fair, and you're off all your devices. And I said, so then what happened? And he said, so then they did well, so we had to give him give the devices back. And he was 7, and he was gaming a lot, and he told on Dad, because Dad was gaming all the time. And so I was like, hello. And then the little girl was about to turn 9, and for her 9-year-old birthday, she was getting an iPhone. And so I was like, whoa, stop, hold on. And so we discussed how this was, and hopefully, because he he really saw that was the problem and that was making a difference. So hopefully that's going to continue. And then just providing kids with responsibilities around the house to make them feel useful. I ask parents all the time, or the kids, so what are your chores? And very few kids have chores anymore, or do things to help the parents around the house. And that's so huge, because if they don't feel useful, or they don't feel like they have a purpose, they're looking for it in something else. And that's no matter what age the kids are. So they're looking to fill this emptiness with something. I remember when I was 5 and I was in kindergarten, the bus, it was when you had bus stops, and the bus would drop me at the end of our court. And I was terrified because there was a black lab and he loved me and he would jump on me, and I was just like, so my little sister, who was 4, walked down the street to meet me at the bus stop. She was a lot braver than I was, so yeah. So screen time recommendations for kids, 0 to 5, until 18 months of age, no screen time at all, other than like maybe doing a video chat with a grandparent who's away, who's out of town or something like that with you. But I have so many kids that come in and they're at their 9-month checkup and they're on their screen, and because they've been in there for 10 minutes with the parent, and then the parent will take away the screen so I can check them, and they go ballistic. And it's just, it's the nature of the beast. It's an addictive thing. And the earlier you start, just like I tell teenagers about drinking, I said, the earlier you start drinking and the more you do it, the more likely you're going to have a problem with this. So same thing with this. This is, and then 2 to 5-year-olds limit non-educational screen to no more than 2 hours a day, and no screens during dinner. So many kids are eating dinner, breakfast, everything with screens, and just cut those out. And then as a parent, learn how to utilize the parental controls. But just like they said in the panel, there are none that are foolproof. And I had a lot of parents last time ask me, so what do you, it's like, there's common sense. I think it's on the next one, I think, yeah. And then don't use them as pacifiers, babysitters, or a way to stop tantrums, or rewards. I remember I did this with your older sister. I rewarded her with snacks, and that turned out to be a bad thing. Well, it's not a problem now, but she was a pretty chunky baby. And turn off screens and remove them from bedrooms. I just don't have them in the bedroom. When we built our house, that was one thing my husband and I fought about, because I refused, and there still aren't any hookups for TVs in the kids' room. I wish there wasn't one in our room, but 24 hours of Daytona was in the last 24 hours, and I've not gotten much sleep. Okay, next. And then kids age 6 to 12, same thing. They need to be outside. They need to be playing with other kids instead of watching videos and gaming and media scrolling. This is Lenore Skenazy, who's the author of Free Range Kids, which I have not read. Has anybody read that? She has some great ideas. But so these were her 7 things. Let kids out of sight without a way to reach you. So let them walk to the neighbor's house or the corner market or something without a phone. And then, encourage sleepovers. I don't know. Or maybe just, maybe not even sleepovers, but just kids coming to your house and your kids going to other people's house, and make it a no phone zone. So everybody has to give their phone to the mom of the house or whatever. And don't micromanage them. In my office, I see that all the time. Like, parents, don't do that to them. Don't do that. And I was like, you know what? Ignore them. Let them figure it out. Let them kind of, we got to stop trying to micromanage and make them just like we want them. They got to learn how to figure things out and how to interact with other people. And then encourage group walking to school. I learned so much from, I rode the bus, and we all walked to the bus stop, and there were kids of all ages there. I learned so much from those kids, and just like interacting with them and all. Some good and some bad, but you know what? You got to figure that out. And if your parent drives you to school every single time and you never have to figure out how to get there or, what's the best route or whatever, it's not necessarily a great thing. And so she talked about drive to 5, so drop kids off 5 minutes from school and let them walk together. And it just gives them a sense of confidence and pride and like, I can do this. And then encourage after school play. They talk about doing these like opening up the playground, just having like 1 or 2 adults there, and then just basically letting them free play if parents want to leave them there and stuff. Go camping, sleepaway camp with no devices and no safetyism. And then, neighborhoods where, maybe one parent in the neighborhood says, hey, okay, my day is this, your day is that, your day is that, and just get them outside and doing things more. And then screen recommendations, no more than 2 hours a day. Screen-based recreational, just use the devices in common areas, so not in their bedrooms. That's the commonsensemedia.com. And avoid monitoring private conversations. So a lot of parents will say, well, I know exactly what they're saying. You know what? I mean, you got to let them go a little bit. And so instead, just block access to age-inappropriate things and just check their phones to make sure they're not on those things. And then focus more on maximizing in-person activities. So get together with other families that are like-minded and try to get them to do more things together. And tell them, okay, so today we're doing this and this and this. And then tonight, and then you have to do your homework, and then you have 8 hours of, so, basically they don't have all this free time for screen time. And older kids, part-time jobs. And even if it's just in the neighborhood. I mean, one of the things was I meant to talk about about the giving little kids jobs and stuff at home, are my sister-in-law had 3 little boys. And when they were really little, they were called the garbage guys. And they had like things made up, shirts made up. And they would go up and bring people's garbage cans down, thank you. And then at the end of the day, they'd bring them back up. And they got like 50 cents per can or something. But it gave them a feeling of accomplishment. And it really helps them develop. Next. Go. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you said. Okay, so delaying social media until 16. It's just a no-brainer. And talk with them about risks. Risks about giving their information to people. Risks about not knowing who these people are. So unless I remember it wasn't Tom, but it was one of the police that did like media stuff. This was years ago. We met with them, and he was like, if your kids or you don't see those people like every day or at least once a week, they shouldn't be a friend of yours on social media unless they're like family or something. And we talked about that. Doing like a digital Sabbath 1 day a week where everybody puts their phones up, and then a week a year, the same thing. And then look for signs of addiction or problematic use. Did I put that on there? It's probably on here, and it's dead. But problematic use is just depression, withdrawal, like they can't, they say they're having a problem with screen time, but they can't stop themselves. They're doing poorly in school. It's a lot like drug use. And like I said, this is an addiction. It's a huge problem. It's changing their brain. It's changing everything about them. And if you don't deal with it before it becomes a problem, you may not ever be able to help them. And then transition to high school should be a milestone where teens get freedom in the real world and virtual world. So, if you wait until 13 to give them a phone and no social media, and then 16 to give them social media, you'll have a lot less problems here, and you won't be starting that as an anxious, depressed kid. And then just, like I said, do part-time jobs, rely on them for things at home. I was reading 70% of 16-year-olds do not have their driver's license, and I see that every day. They're like, no, I don't want it. I don't want that responsibility. I don't want to do it. I'm scared. And that's scary. And then encourage them to do things that they wouldn't typically do. is that next slide? So this is me, and that's my younger sister in the middle, and that's her friend. I was 18, Annette was 16, and Lisa was 16, and then I had a friend, Margaret, that was 18. Does anyone know that? Yeah. So I grew up in Northern Virginia, and we drove, my oldest sister lived in Texas at the time, and we drove from DC, the four of us, in this little Toyota Tercel, to Memphis, spent the night in a motel, then went on to Dallas to stay with my sister for a week. And this was, I think, on our way back. And we were like, oh my God, we got to take a picture. This is crazy. Where are we? That was a foreshadowing. Years later, when I was in medical school, I met my husband, Greg, and he's looking through my photo album, and he's like, where did you do that? It was funny. But anyway, yeah, I mean, I was number 7 of 8, so by the time they got to me, they're like, whatever you got, yeah, you know. I mean, my sister was 13. She took care of all 8 of us for like an overnight and stuff, you know. So I know it's not the same, but it's not as scary as media and all makes it sound. And you know what? After doing this for however long I've done it, 30 years, and just looking at the studies recently, I am so much more terrified of the virtual world than the real world. Is there another? Yeah, I kind of did that one. And what schools can do. So I loved her, and I'm going to read this book and all, but that Lenore that I was talking about, started this Let Grow project, and it's a homework assignment. But you know what? I mean, you can do this at home too. It's from K through 8, where they had to pick something they've never done, and I think they did 20 of these assignments in a year. And they and their parents came up with the assignments, and then they had to come back and tell about it and all. It was pretty cool. This one little girl was 11. Her parents left for work one day, left her to get the 5-year-old sister and her ready for school. She made sure she got their breakfast, got dressed, everything. And she said, oh my gosh, I felt like I was needed. I felt like I had a purpose. And that is so important right now. And we just have to get the parents out of school. I'm praying that legislature passes. And getting places where kids can play free and parents not get in trouble. I have had more DCS calls on parents that I know that are good parents, whose kid was, you know, at a reasonable age doing something alone, than some of these kids that I see that scare the heck out of me that I call DCS about every single day, or I'm exaggerating, but a lot, and it never happens. So we need to be more proactive on parenting in a healthy way, that we allow our kids to take some of the risks at least some of the risks that we took, and learn from it, and learn how to be not so fragile. And then, and this was, I think, a quote from this book that I read, and there's a hole and emptiness in all of us that we strive to fill. If it doesn't get filled up with something noble and elevated, modern society will quickly pump it full of garbage. That has been true since the beginning of the age of mass media, but the garbage pump got 100 times more powerful in the 2010s with the introduction of the smartphone. And I have a hard time, I have people saying, well, you know, there are some good things about the smartphone or about technology and all. I have a really hard time finding those. I mean, yeah, we're connected in a crazy way. I don't feel very connected. I mean, I'm sure, and I know I can think of some positive things, but very few. And so my call is to just think about the future of your kids, like he was saying. Think about what you want them to be. Think about where you want them to be. And it's hard. I mean, my parents were, I had a friend who, she used to tell me, I wish I lived in your family. You're like the Brady Bunch. I'm like, what are you kidding? I wish I lived in your family, because she had just older siblings and her parents were older, and they were just like, whatever, Maureen, go do. And she ended up in a lot of trouble. She's doing well now down the road, but she ended up in a lot of trouble. But my parents were mean. I mean, they were strict. I couldn't go to a boy-girl party till I was 18 or 16 or something, But then, I went to Dallas with my sister and my girlfriend. So it's the things that are good for your kids, you got to let go of and let them do it. And the things that are going to be terrible and only bring trouble for them, you got to say no. You just have to say no. And I think the more that we all talk about it and, start support groups. I mean, if we ever needed a support group, parents need support groups, and start all doing it at once. And I do. I see a lot more parents like saying, yeah, no, we decided that they're not getting a phone, and they're definitely not getting social media, but they're few and far between. And that's the one thing that they say is, we don't have any support because their friends all have it. And, so anyway.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
I think we might have time for maybe one.
Oh, sorry.
1.5
Much questions.
If anybody's got anything.
You recommended another book to probably.
Oh, yeah, this Screen Kids. And there's one for, this is Gary Chapman that did the 5 love languages. Such an easy book to read, and it will make you take the phones away.
Your opinion, you mentioned screen time before bed, but what about this good old book reading with the flashlight?
Yeah, flashlight. I don't think, is flashlight blue light? I don't know. I don't know either. That's what I tell them. The parents are like, well, how are they going to go to sleep? And I said, turn the light on, let them read. They'll be out like that, and then go turn the light off. Or, yeah.
I have a question. My third son, or my middle child, he has autism. And we try to, well, more so me. I tried to limit his screen time
Yeah.
a bit.
Yeah.
He shuffles back and forth between me, and his mom.
Yeah.
And honestly, I've never seen a kid so addicted to screen time. When he comes with us, I'm like, what are you doing? So I tell his dad that, by the way, it'd be healthy for us to take a time out to let him go outside and go do something else. Because he's really on top of it. Like, if he does not have his tablet, it's like a meltdown every single time.
Yeah.
And I have been really trying
Yeah.
to conserve everybody from that, because it's driving me nuts.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm like, that's all he wants.
And it's really hard because a lot of the autistic kids are nonverbal, and so you can't explain to them or things like that. But I think so much of it is like right from the beginning. You just got to not do it. And then, like you said, I mean, if you have him for a few days in a row and you don't do any screen time and see what he does, it doesn't take. If they're still fairly young and all, it doesn't take long. It's like I battle with parents about taking the pacifier away. I'm like, it's you, it's not them. You take it away. In 3 to 5 days, they won't even remember what the pacifier was. And so much of, this is, I don't know if you guys are doing dance class, but this is one of the best books I've ever read. And I've read a ton of like parenting books and stuff. And I mean, he's so spot on. He also helped write The Coddling of the American Mind, which was really good too. But it's just changing. It's a change, and nobody loves change. But once you make that change and they get used to it, it's like, oh wow, that was a good thing.
And a lot of people have told me that the consistency of it is what is key. The consistent timeouts or the
Absolutely, yeah. And that's what's so hard, because we have so many families that are living in 2 places. The kids are living in 2 places, and it's, you have to get on the same page. And it's hard because you can't, I get that. Yeah. But the other thing is you can say, okay, well, at my house, it's no screened house. Whatever you do there, I can't control, but at my house, no screens. Yeah, or 1 hour screen or whatever. I mean, I'm reasonable too.
Did you say 13 phones, or did you say? I know the book says 14. Did you? I thought you said 13 a minute ago.
Well, it's like high school. I mean, 13, 14, whatever. Yeah. I mean, I say 16, but
yeah.
yeah.
I'm just happy there's little Apple Watches. Because, I mean, that, you can message with them still, and
Yeah,
You can also get a GAB phone.
yes, those are
They-
great.
No internet.
Right.
No games.
Exactly.
No social
Yeah.
media. It's
Did you
phone
see,
and
I meant to bring a video of this. Did any of you guys see on the news the other night? I forget, it was in Northern Virginia somewhere, but this one 14-year-old boy who played, I think, lacrosse. Did you see that? And so he decided he was tired of spending all this time on social media and everything, so he got a flip phone. And yeah, I felt his pain as he was doing the. And then he got like a few of his friends to do the same thing, and they did it for a week. One of them stopped after the first day, and the others after the week, they were like, yeah, I was definitely more connected with people and all, but I'm going back to my phone. But he's continued, and yeah, I mean, it was great to hear him say, if you guys can look that up, it was great. I mean, and most kids do realize it. It's just that they need the boundaries. They need limits. I mean, what 13-year-old, I mean, when I was 13, man, I would have been into all sorts of stuff if it wasn't for my parents. I mean, I would have been like that when I was, I mean, I would not be where I am if it weren't for my parents. I mean, my first year of college, I went to UVA in Charlottesville. Had been at an all-girls Catholic school for all my life. I'm like, yeah, I did not do too well. And they were like, okay, we're not going to pay for your college unless you go here where we want you to go and make a 4.0. So you know what? You never stop being a parent, and that's the problem is I've seen so many parents stop being parents, and you can't. Then don't have kids, If you're not going to be a parent, do not have kids. And I try to tell all these young kids too, just remember, I don't care what kind of birth control you're using, there's always that slight chance that you're going to get pregnant and you're going to have a kid. And that's going to be the partner that you're going to have to raise this kid with. And so, so if it's worth that, have at it, have sex. But if it's not, you better not. Sorry.
No, you're good. Let's give Nicole and her daughter a
Thank you.